It was a clear morning in Western Sydney. An industrial yard, quiet except for the hum of machinery and the shuffle of boots on concrete. A 40-ton excavator sat under the harsh Australian sun. Border Force officers whispered into radios, and then, sparks began to fly. To anyone else, it was just a digger. But the Australian Border Force and the Australian Federal Police weren't convinced. Their scanners had flagged something unusual inside the machine's arm, dense material that shouldn't have been there. When officers drilled through the steel casing, they expected to find the purest MDMA ever sent across oceans. Instead, they found nothing. That single moment, what they didn't find, set off a chain reaction stretching across 2 continents. Back in the UK, detectives from the National Crime Agency were already watching 2 men unravel. Danny Brown and Stefan Baldauf, veteran traffickers who thought they'd just pulled off the perfect £45 million shipment. Instead, they just triggered one of the most significant joint operations between British and Australian authorities, a case that would rewrite the way organised crime is tracked, encrypted, and dismantled. If you think you'd never get caught in a story like this, think again. Every single person in this case thought the same, right up until the drills started cutting through their plans. Hit subscribe before you forget, because the next case might already be unfolding closer than you think. Before the excavator ever reached Sydney, before scanners and drills and sparks, this story began quietly, in the United Kingdom. 2 men. Experienced. Patient. Calculated. Danny Brown and Stefan Baldauf. Danny Brown, 55. A familiar name to detectives long before EncroChat ever existed. He wasn't the reckless kind, no flash cars, no loud spending. Brown was what police call old-school organized. He'd operated under layers of respectability, using contacts built over decades in the UK's high-end drug scene. Stefan Baldauf, 64. A logistics specialist. He'd spent years in the world of legitimate freight and construction haulage. The kind of man who understood shipping codes, customs paperwork, and how to make a 40-ton machine disappear in plain sight. When Brown needed someone who could move product across borders, Baldauf was the quiet expert who made it happen. By 2019, the global drug trade was changing. The EncroChat network, an encrypted messaging platform, had become the underworld's new safe house. For veteran traffickers like Brown and Baldauf, it wasn't just a tool. It was freedom, a digital fortress where they could rebuild their empire, one coded message at a time. Through encrypted handles, they planned shipments, payments, and logistics. The names behind the screens vanished, replaced with aliases like Throw Thetis and Bold Move. To outsiders, their communication looked like harmless chatter. To investigators, it would later read like a playbook of a £45 million smuggling operation. To make their plans look legitimate, they hid in plain sight. Haulage firms, construction companies, heavy equipment exports, all real businesses, all paper trails that seemed clean. Brown and Baldauf invested through middlemen, using bank accounts, invoices, and equipment purchases that gave everything a surface of respectability. It was a model perfected by years of criminal evolution, taking advantage of the same systems that build nations, trade routes, logistics, and trust. Behind their operations were layers of companies, real directors, real addresses, all masking one central purpose: moving narcotics on an industrial scale. They believed they'd adapted. Old criminals reborn through new technology. But the very tool they trusted most, EncroChat, was already compromised. Every message they typed, every shipment they planned, every coded word they thought was hidden, was already being read by law enforcement. By late 2019, their network had taken shape. Danny Brown and Stefan Baldauf were no longer just discussing opportunities, they were building a system. Encrypted phones became their office. EncroChat rooms became their boardroom. They needed a front, a legitimate business to move heavy machinery without raising suspicion. That role fell to Leon Riley, director of Mizzen Equipment Limited, construction firm based in the Midlands. On paper, the company supplied industrial machinery and plant equipment. In reality, it provided something more valuable: paperwork, invoices, and export legitimacy. In early 2020, the group focused on a single purchase, a Doosan DX420 excavator. A 40-ton machine worth well over €150,000. They secured it for just $75,000, less than half its true value, through an online auction platform called Iron Planet. The auction listing appeared normal: serial numbers, photographs, shipping details, all the signs of a genuine sale. But it wasn't. The listing was staged, a digital facade designed to make the export look routine to customs and shipping agents. The excavator was the perfect vessel: massive, complex, and unassuming. Inside its steel arm, there would be room for hundreds of kilograms of MDMA. Brown and Baldauf believed that by using a legitimate platform and an authentic company, they built a shield no one could see through. But the very step meant to make their plan invisible began to draw attention. The fake listing had gone live on a public marketplace, and genuine buyers had started to notice. Some made offers. Others tried to contact the seller. The auction was working, a little too well. The plan was in motion. From a quiet yard in Leeds, the Doosan DX420 excavator began its final journey across Britain. Its destination: a unit in Grays, Essex, an unremarkable industrial site that would soon become the centre of a £45 million operation. Inside that unit, the men worked with precision. The project was led by engineer Philip Lawson, the man behind the concealment system. His task wasn't to build, but to erase, to create a hidden compartment capable of carrying hundreds of kilograms of MDMA without leaving a trace. The excavator's arm was cut open along its length. A steel cavity was carved out, its interior reinforced, and then packed with 227 shrink-wrapped parcels of MDMA, each one pure, each one carefully sealed. When finished, the hidden space held more than 448 kilograms of the drug. To beat border scans, Lawson lined the cavity with lead sheeting, dense enough to block X-rays. Then came the cosmetic cover-up, industrial-grade repainting, manufacturer stickers reapplied, and the welds polished until they looked untouched. Even under inspection, the modification was invisible. Supervising the final stage was Tony Borge, another trusted hand within the network. He made sure every surface looked authentic, every serial number matched, and every bolt was back in place. When the work was done, the digger looked flawless, a trade item ready for export. But beneath the steel was a Trojan horse worth more than gold. The men believed the machine was on its way to Australia undetected. They didn't know that, across the world, border officers were already waiting. They thought no one was watching, just like millions think no one's tracking what they post, buy, or move. If you're still not subscribed, ask yourself why you'd want to miss what happens next. The excavator left Britain under clear skies, sealed, documented, and declared as legitimate trade. Its paperwork was clean. Its route was carefully planned. Inside its steel arm sat 448 kilograms of MDMA, tested at 77.5% purity. By the time it reached Australian streets, that load would be worth more than £45 million. On both sides of the world, the operation moved with military precision. In the United Kingdom, Danny Brown and Stefan Baldauf monitored every step from their encrypted EncroChat devices. Their Australian contacts, Tony Moores and Raymond Lipovac, coordinated the reception on the ground. Each message, each instruction, was coded in language only they understood. They weren't running a single deal, they were running a supply chain. EncroChat became their command center. They tracked the excavator as it crossed ports, scanned manifests, and confirmed customs clearances. They called it the load. Weeks passed, and the network hummed quietly, payments moved, updates confirmed, and photos of shipping labels sent between continents. To the men in Britain, it all looked perfect. Every report showed movement. Every checkpoint passed. They built what they believed was an unbreakable system, hidden behind technology, codes, and money trails. For them, this was proof that control could be absolute. But they were wrong. While the shipment crossed the Indian Ocean, the Australian Border Force had already moved. Working under Operation Ironside and intelligence shared from the UK's Operation Venetic, border teams intercepted the digger the moment it arrived in Brisbane. Customs scanners lit up, not with the drugs, but with empty space. Inside the excavator's arm, officers found the hollow cavity, the lead lining, and the telltale signs of concealment. The drugs were there, just long enough to be catalogued, photographed, and quietly removed. In their place, officers fitted a series of tracking devices and a concealed microphone inside the same welded seams. Every vibration, every sound, and every conversation near the digger would be recorded. The machine was resealed, repainted, and sent back on its journey. To Brown and Baldauf, nothing had changed. To law enforcement, everything had. As the excavator rolled across New South Wales toward its final destination, it was no longer a container of narcotics. It was a live wire, feeding every movement, every conversation, back to investigators. Each message the network sent through EncroChat, instructions, confirmations, panic, was being read in real time. The operation they thought was invisible had become the evidence that would destroy them. The digger kept moving. But this time, it wasn't carrying drugs, it was carrying evidence. Western Sydney. A quiet street in Blacktown. In the distance, just another work site, concrete dust, generators, and a 40-ton excavator parked under tarpaulin. To passers-by, nothing unusual. But to the men standing beside it, this was supposed to be the moment everything paid off. Tony Moores and Raymond Lipovac had waited weeks for this shipment. They'd received blueprints from the United Kingdom, sketches marked with X's and arrows, showing exactly where to cut. Inside that steel arm, they believed, sat 448 kilograms of high-purity MDMA. A fortune in crystal form, sealed behind welds that only they knew how to reach. They started early. Grinders, drills, and patience, hour after hour, cutting through thick industrial steel. Each movement followed the plans drawn by Philip Lawson, the engineer behind the concealment. The first day passed without discovery. They told themselves they'd mismeasured. They'd try again tomorrow. By the second day, frustration grew. They expanded the cuts, widened the trench, and peeled back layers of metal that were never meant to be touched again. Still nothing. No shrink wrap. No scent. No trace. By the third day, belief turned to panic. Through EncroChat, messages began to fly back across the world. Coordinates, timestamps, updates, all sent to Danny Brown and Stefan Baldauf back in Britain. The men who had designed the export were now watching their own plan collapse, text by text. "It's empty," one message read. Another came minutes later, "Check again. It's there somewhere." What none of them knew was that every word they typed was already being read by investigators who were inside the very system they trusted most. Law enforcement in both hemispheres had been listening the whole time. Each photo was uploaded. Each panicked conversation. Each voice message describes where to cut. All intercepted. All recorded. The men on EncroChat thought they were invisible. But by 2020, under Operation Venetic, agencies in the UK, France, and the Netherlands had already cracked the network's encryption. What Brown and Baldauf didn't realize was that their secret phone wasn't secure, it was evidence. Moores and Lipovac tried again. They cut deeper, past the welds, past the paint, searching for anything that could justify the risk they'd taken. Still, the arm remained empty. All they found was silence, and the faint click of the hidden microphone recording every word. Back in the UK, confusion spread through the network. Brown accused the Australian crew of incompetence. Baldauf suspected theft. Leon Riley messaged repeatedly, demanding photos of the cavity and proof that the drugs were gone. Each man had his own theory. None suspected the truth, that their entire operation was being monitored in real time. For investigators, it was the perfect storm, a group of experienced traffickers documenting their own failure step by step. Every message preserved. Every doubt exposed. Even their panic became evidence. They thought they were in control. But every command, every photo, every plan, they were writing their own arrest warrant. The digger stood motionless under the Sydney sun. To the men who built this empire, it was now worthless steel. To police on 2 continents, it was the key to bringing the entire network down. it didn't end with the missing drugs. It ended with a message, sent from an encrypted phone that no longer belonged to them. By mid-2020, Operation Venetic had quietly begun reshaping the criminal underworld. A collaboration between French, Dutch, and British authorities had done what traffickers swore was impossible. They had broken into EncroChat, the so-called unbreakable phone network used by thousands of high-level offenders across Europe. Inside the data, investigators found two names, or rather, two aliases, Throthetis and Bold Move. The messages between them spoke of excavators, containers, and a product heading for Australia. Each chat was casual, confident, almost bored. They had no idea they were speaking directly to police servers. But the cracks weren't just digital. Even the smallest mistakes began to point directly to their faces. In one message, Danny Brown sent a photo, his bulldog sitting near a television screen. To him, it was harmless. To investigators, it was gold. A phone number reflected in the TV glass matched one registered to his home address in Sutton Coldfield. From that reflection, they built a timeline. In another image, a polished brass plaque caught more than expected. The reflection of a man's wristwatch, and the watch itself, matched one worn by Stefan Baldauf in earlier surveillance photographs. In June 2020, the walls began to close in. Early morning raids across Yorkshire, Leicestershire, and the West Midlands. Unmarked vans. Silent entries. No gunfire, no chase, just the quiet precision of years of investigation coming to a point. Brown was arrested first, in his home. Officers found encrypted devices, notes, and links to companies used to disguise shipments. Baldauf was next, calm, polite, and still convinced that silence could save him. It couldn't. Across the world, the Australian Federal Police were already closing their part of the circle. After weeks of surveillance, they moved on the industrial site in Sydney's west. Both Tony Moores and Raymond Lipovac were detained. In their possession, blueprints, encrypted phones, and coded correspondence with contacts in the United Kingdom. The operation that began with a single modified excavator now spanned 2 continents, united by a trail of messages that no one could erase. In court, prosecutors presented the full story. The purchase of the €75,000 Doosan digger. The fake Iron Planet listing. The concealment system cut by Philip Lawson. And the 448 kilograms of MDMA were replaced long before the excavator ever touched Australian soil. Investigators read out transcripts of entire conversations between Throthetis and Bold Move, every message captured, every location pinned. The illusion of secrecy shattered by their own words. By December 2022, the courtroom at Kingston Crown Court became the final stage of a story built on calculation, encryption, and arrogance. No code names now. No aliases. Only names, sentences, and years that would outlast their silence. Stefan Baldauf, 62, a logistics veteran who spent decades moving freight across borders, real and illegal alike. His skill turned trucks and diggers into tools of deception. He was sentenced to 28 years. Danny Brown, 55. A career operator from Sutton Coldfield, known for his methodical discipline and love of control. His empire ran on encrypted confidence. He was sentenced to 26 years. Leon Riley, 49, the businessman who offered legitimacy through missing equipment, blending paperwork with criminal precision. He handled movement, invoices, and cover. He was sentenced to 24 years. Thomas Murray, 48, another within the logistics chain, ensuring the digger's route appeared lawful from start to shipment. His calm professionalism masked years of trafficking experience. He was sentenced to 24 years. Philip Lawson, 60, the mechanical engineer who cut open steel with surgical precision, building the hidden chamber that fooled scanners. His design turned a digger into a vault. He was jailed for 23 years. Tony Borge, 58, a foreman in Essex, the man who oversaw the welding, sealing, and final cosmetic touches. He ensured nothing looked out of place. He was sentenced to 15 years. Daniel Sartin, 44, warehouse provider, the quiet facilitator who gave the operation its physical base. He handled space, storage, and deniability. He was also sentenced to 24 years. The sentence marked one of the longest drug trafficking convictions in recent British history, the end of a global operation that spanned continents and encrypted networks. But the story didn't end there. In 2025, under the Proceeds of Crime Act, confiscation orders were enforced. Authorities stripped away what profits remained. Baldauf was ordered to surrender £1.7 million. Lawson was forced to return £182,000, money traced to the construction of the concealment system itself. The National Crime Agency confirmed the recovered funds were redirected to community safety and crime prevention programs, a small measure of justice drawn from organized deceit. EncroChat, once the fortress of the underworld, had become law enforcement's greatest weapon. What was meant to hide the powerful instead exposed them, message by message, word by word. For all their precision and planning, it wasn't greed that exposed them. It was confidence, the belief that no one was watching. And in that belief, they built their own downfall. A 40-ton excavator. A £45 million plan. And a message app that promised total secrecy. In the end, the real machine wasn't the digger. It was EncroChat, a network built to hide the powerful that instead recorded every word that buried them. From Leeds to London, from Essex to Sydney, one shipment told the story of an empire undone by its own technology. Every encrypted word, every photo, every coordinate became a confession. And the system they thought would protect them became the witness that never slept. How many other ordinary shipments are moving right now? How many crates, trucks, and cargo holds hide more than anyone imagines? If you think stories like this end here, think again. The next one is already in motion, another encrypted route, another empire hiding in plain sight. Don't just watch from the sidelines. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and stay ahead of the next takedown before it hits the headlines. Because the next machine might already be moving.